Hello and welcome to this edition of A Conversation With. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and it's time for an annual visit here. The holiday season is here. The Reverend Dave Lima joining us. He is the Executive Minister of the Interchurch Council of Greater New Bedford. I think you've come on the last 3 years now. Every time we've done this show, we've talked about it. It's that time of year.
It is, and we're always grateful to be a part of it.
As you look at, and I think I've always asked you this, the previous other shows here, but as you look at 2023 from your standpoint here, and with Christmas and New Year's, and it's really a reflection period here, where do you see where we are right now?
Well, I see there's a lot of good things that are happening, and for many, they're probably in a better place than they were a year ago. You know, the markets are coming back, the economy seems to be recovering. But then again, that all depends on who you're talking to. Our politics is as ugly as ever as far as I'm concerned, coming out of Washington and everything else. And now that we're in election year, a presidential and more, you're getting the rhetoric. So you got to sift through all that for truth. But I think, you know, the markets are coming back, and so a lot of the folks, like myself, that are closer to retirement, you know, we see, you know, possibly a light at the end of the tunnel. That these last few years, let's, you know, acknowledge that with the pandemic and everything else, it was hard to see what our future might be. We didn't know, you know. But yeah, on the other hand, there's a lot of things that have been challenged, and you know, climate change, whether you believe in it or not, you know, we're starting to see some terrific weather that's happening out there, and it's affecting a lot of people. And I say that only because when you're talking about housing and everything else, there is some movement in our city, but not enough. And there's, you know, the rents and the mortgages. So again, where are we, you know, physically? I think that there's good, bad, and possibly even a little bit of ugly.
Yeah. On
the other hand, I see more people are trying to help. I think there's more people stepping up. I see churches working together, and with that which is happening in the Middle East, I see faiths trying to work together and bring understanding. And we're grateful for you and New Bedford Cable Access for having us to be able to speak. The rabbi, myself, and Martin Bentz, the outreach coordinator for the Muslim community.
Where, you know, we talk about that, the commercialism of Christmas and what have you. I saw an interesting stat 10 years ago, and this was, I guess, the latest numbers. 10 years ago, 59% of Americans said they celebrated Christmas as a religious holiday, and they expect it now to be less. How do you change that? Can you change it?
I'm not sure. I got to be honest with you. You know, the churches strive, but attendance is down between pandemic and other things. Inner city churches have their challenges, although there are some churches that have some growth. That's not the norm. Christmas, I think, between the commercialization and everything else, I mean, heck, I was seeing Christmas decorations up before Thanksgiving was up.
Oh yeah, in October.
Yeah, and I saw an actual meme on something, whether it was social media or whatever, that had the turkey stopping Santa at the door, saying, "Wait a minute, I go first," you know, for Thanksgiving. So you see a lot of that's happening, and you know, heck, I was reading about the cost of Christmas trees. If you are one who wants a Christmas tree and everything else, it's become costly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the thought of, hey, let's go to New Year's Eve service, Christmas Eve service, you know, do the things with the families. A lot of the families are not nuclear like they used to be. And I don't mean just the mom, the dad, and the two children, and the dog, 2.5 children and the dog, unless you're a cat family, of course. I'm talking about just something where we're all doing something together. That's almost an exception rather than the norm. And holidays used to be the thing, is family coming together, and you know, whether coming from out of town or whatever, and then going to church together and celebrating our faith together. it has slipped. How do we get it back? I think we just keep introducing people, and we keep inviting people to come with us and to say, hey, there's a place where you can belong. There's a lot of lonely people out there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of folks that have had things happen in their lives, and they kind of won't tell you necessarily give up, but don't see the reason why. And I think we need to give people the reason why, Don't let them be alone. Even if you don't bring them to church, at least go share the love of God. St. Francis of Assisi is somebody I love to quote, because it says, every day I preach Christ, and when I need to, I speak. It's about service. It's about care. It's about showing that love for one another without preaching and telling each other. I mean, heck, you got churches that condemn each other because they're not doing it our way. You've got faiths that do that, obviously, and we need to stop doing that.
Well, you do see the, I guess now that I guess I've seen it more in recent times. I mean, you see fractures within the same faiths now too.
Without a doubt.
And I don't remember seeing that for most of my life, I guess. Maybe it was always there, but I guess I never really saw it.
I think, look, we're all human beings, and we all have our opinions, and there are things that we're all going to have disagreements with. But just, like our politics, it's same in the church, same in our families. There was always that thought that we needed to do something to work together. Most of the ways that would be accomplished is compromise. And not compromise on our values, but if I want a certain thing and my wife wants a certain thing, we can go get our own things separately, or we can say, wait a minute, it's more important that we do things together. So how do I help her feel valued, respected, and heard, and hopefully she hears the same from me? And it's by actually trying to work together that we actually see that happen.
I've heard people this past year, or this past holiday season, well, Jesus wasn't born in December. I get that.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, the origins of Christmas.
So no matter what I tell you, somebody's going to say, boy, he get that wrong.
Yeah.
The origins of Christmas, of course, is through the Gospels. That's where we receive it.
Yeah.
It goes back into the Old Testament and the prophecies, from Isaiah and so many others, that talks about the Messiah to come, talks about the one who would be from the lineage of David, and that would be the King and the Lord of Lords. And so that's why many did not expect this Christ, this child that was born in a manger. I mean, this is where animals ate out of. But there was no room in the inn. Not that there was an inn back in those days. People would take in strangers. But there was no place for them to go. And so they did go where the animals were. They did lay the baby in the manger according to the scriptures.
Correct, yeah.
But you did also have the heralding of the prophecies, the prophets that came, the angels that spoke. And a lot of people will say, well, that's mysticism and all this. You're right. It could be that way if that's what you perceive, but that's where we, as a faith, you believe in something more than yourself. I'm human. The thought that there's an angel standing next to me and standing next to you is kind of hard to understand because I don't see it. It's not tangible. And we are looking to be tangible people.
Yeah.
That's where faith goes beyond, because faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. We got to believe the scriptures for what they are and what they tell us. And so this child that was born to a man who was betrothed to his wife. They weren't married yet.
No.
And this was actually before quote unquote engagement, and then all of a sudden she's pregnant. Well, that one's a mind bender for people that don't believe in the Christian word. She was a virgin and all that. And some people would say, yeah, but that was written in this way, and this is what man said. And so it becomes very difficult for me in my personal faith, and this is what I can speak to with great certainty, is there's things that the Bible even says that God's ways are not my ways. God's thoughts are not my thoughts. They're beyond me. I don't have the capacity to understand. But if I do believe there's a creator that exists, then he's got a lot more, God's got a lot more capability than I have.
He's got a lot more on the plate.
He does. But he's also given us that place of hope. He gave us the Son of God who would live and preach and teach us the way to live, who would give us and preach and teach disciples that would go on to teach more. And its mission, it is a teaching of love. It's a teaching of caring and of service. I've been preaching and talking lately in the church about how he didn't go into the houses of the rich people. He went into the houses of the sinners. And when he was accused by the religious leaders of his day, why are you consorting with this type of people? He even said it. He said it about Matthew, the tax collector who became one of the apostles. He says the doctor doesn't go to work with the well. He goes to work with the sick. He goes to the people that have needs. And that's what we're supposed to do, is to follow in that place. That, to me, is more the message of Christmas than anything else. He taught us. He showed us. He lived a life of simplicity. And that doesn't mean that we're all supposed to be, living in poverty or anything else. But there's things that I can do to help others instead of buying that extra TV for the house or the extra thing that I want or the new furniture when I've already got good furniture because I want to change the style just for the sake of changing the style. I don't want to begrudge anybody anything they want to do. But share a little bit because you've been blessed, and that's what the Bible tells us too.
And in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, not just, certainly here in our home, in our community, but in communities near and far. There are people that are struggling far more than we know.
Without a doubt. When you stop to consider what so many people are going through, what's happening in the Middle East right now, and the devastation that both Israel and Gaza is feeling right now, the uncertainty, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in so many different places. There is so many different issues and problems. And sometimes when I stop to think about the things we complain about, I'm losing weight. I got to buy more clothes. I have the ability to buy more clothes. I have the ability to do these things, and yet I know that if I walk the streets of New Bedford, a street that is in a city and a country that's prosperous, and yet there's people out there that don't have even what I have, what I don't use that I could give, and I've heard some people who will. I watched one person, literally. You get the mobile ministries truck that goes out and feeds the poor every night, the homeless and working poor, and I once watched a person that came up and their shoes were literally falling off their feet. The soles were coming loose and everything else. And this was a person that was living in an encampment in the city. Didn't have a shelter, didn't have a place to go. I watched one of the workers, and we're talking, it wasn't snow on the ground, but we were talking cold weather.
Yeah.
Took their shoes off their feet and gave it to this person. Now, it might sound a little bit grandiose, but at the same time, the compassion that this person had, knowing that they had other shoes to throw on, not right away, but they could go home and throw on another pair. This person needed something, and I think whether it's physical needs, mental needs, spiritual needs, that's where we make a difference, both as a community and as a house of faith. So how can I help you? How can I help and make you feel part of what we are? And that's humankind in the first place, and then as people of God.
Spiritually, you look at, and you talked about attendance earlier, but it's important for those younger kids, preteens and what have you, to understand the importance of faith. And
It is.
that's a hard sell in 2023.
It is. And I think it's been a hard sell for a while because there's been a slippage, over the years.
When we were kids, it wasn't a question.
No, it wasn't a question. And I got to be honest with you, there were times that I got aggravated that I had to be home by a certain time because we had to get cleaned up. We had to get our Sunday clothes on or our church clothes on. And we even had separate clothes to wear.
Yeah.
The good clothes. We had our Sunday best or our church service. If we were, when I grew up Catholic, and when Saturday nights became acceptable, we'd go to Saturday nights and whatnot. And so you'd have to come in from playing ball, on time to be cleaned up, to be dressed, to be changed, to go. But these are some of the habits that later on became something that I fell back on when I was going through a rough period of time.
Yeah.
And I recognized that there was a piece that I didn't always understand. There was something that was reliable in my life that I'd gotten away from. Even the work that we do when we go out and work with those that have addictions and overdose and all. And our program with the New Bedford Police Department and with Seven Hills Behavioral is we will visit somebody that's had an overdose, and we'll go to the home and we'll offer services. And we go with a police officer, plainclothes. We go with a drug resource counselor or a recovery coach, and we go with a chaplain. And it's all about how do we help you, help yourself? How do we help the family and support them? And I can't tell you how many times, because some people say, well, why does the chaplain go? Well, the chaplain goes because they get educated so they understand the science of addiction. So they're not just going there to look good and to pray over people, though many times that's what will end up happening.
Yeah.
People recognize that the church or the synagogue or the mosque, wherever it is, that was a place of care, compassion, and stability in their life at one time. And I can't tell you how many people who have, when we're visiting with them, will tell you, I used to go to church, but now I'm ashamed. And I'm saying, don't be ashamed. Connect again, because I'm sure they've been worried about you. Well, they did call, but I put them off.
Well, a lot of thing is, too, is that, chatting with other folks, religious leaders, and you and I have talked about this off camera, you see a lot of kids who, if you're Catholic, you get confirmation, you're done.
Yeah.
And they're done. They don't come back, but yet when they get kids, because they've had a foundation, when their children are born,
right,
they do see people come back at that time.
Necessity.
But there's a gap of 10, 15 years.
But the Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. And when they get old, they won't depart. I think there's a period of time in all our lives where we experiment with life in general. This is what my parents made me do. This is what was expected of me.
Yeah.
Now I want to learn what I want to do.
Yeah.
And most of the time, people come back to their faith. Maybe they didn't fully leave it, but they didn't fully envelop it. They dipped their feet, whatever. They tried other things, and some of it was okay. Wasn't necessarily bad. Some of it was. And but then there comes a time where you realize, now I'm responsible for raising children. And what are they going to believe? What are they going to know? What are they going to do? And that's when, like you say, a lot of them will come back to the church because the church gave me a foundation. And maybe I walked away from it, but I need my children to have that too, and I need help to be able to do that.
And that's why Christmas and New Year's is a good time to do that. To start, if you haven't gone, the holidays are a good time to partake in that experience again.
It is, and let's face it, for most churches, that's where you have more people that would come, people that aren't necessarily steady or or come only once in a while, but they go. And why? Because of tradition.
And churches, and I don't mean to put this like in a selling point, but churches look beautiful. The music they're familiar with the music, and it's a great, and again, I don't mean to say it like this, but it's a great selling point, all the things that are there.
Are you talking about marketing?
Exactly. It's a great sort of thing when you go back.
It is. And people, because of the season, people are more festive. Because of the season, people are more accepting and loving and smiling. And let's face it, nobody wants to go into a grumpy house of faith. But because of the season, we all seem to make a little bit more effort. From the ministers right on down. And people get excited to come in and see somebody they haven't seen in a while. And so, yeah, there is a different atmosphere. I would hope it would carry all through the year, but it doesn't, and let's all acknowledge that. But at the same time, it's up to all of us to help make it be the normal atmosphere.
I go back to, as a kid, my favorite Christmas special was Charlie Brown's Christmas.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I know it's funny when you think back, it's been it's been 58 years, I believe? 65.
Yeah.
It came out. And how much static Charles Schultz got because of the religious connotation in it.
Yeah.
And he said, that's staying.
There it is.
And it's funny because when Linus does his lines, I can tell you the true meaning of Christmas.
Yeah.
It's powerful and short,
It
and it's something that a young kid, because kids watch that,
of course,
can understand.
Very simply. And maybe that's what I should have answered before, but I can't follow Linus. Linus does it better than I do.
Oh yeah, he does. As many times as I've seen it.
But you know what? For my wife, that was we got a clock, a Charlie Brown clock, that has all that Christmas music from the Charlie Brown Christmas special. It does carry through right through your adulthood. And why? Because it was a memory, a sweet memory, one that touched our lives. And for a lot of people, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those memories that they cherish. And sometimes we feel we've lost them. And it's not necessarily we've lost them, but we've kind of got it. Our lives have gotten cluttered. We get distracted, and we don't go looking back again. And maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe what helps transform my church is people coming back to the church that had walked away from the church. Not necessarily walked away because of our church not being what it is, or some other church they've walked away from. It's just that life got busy.
Yeah.
And we think that's the way it should be. I was just having this discussion with some people the other day about why it seems that things have changed so much. And a lot of things have changed because in the quote-unquote earlier days, there was a priority on houses of faith. Even the government understood that was important.
Sundays.
You had blue laws.
Yeah.
And there was nothing open. There were no stores open. There were no... a certain select restaurants could be open.
Yeah, convenience stores were open and service.
Convenience and restaurants. Bars were closed.
Yeah.
All of that was closed. Even our election day, everything used to be closed.
Yeah.
Because that made it a priority. Now, of course, nothing's closed on election day, and we see how we try to get people to the polls, and it's so difficult, especially in this city. Same thing with church.
You go to church, and then you'd have your big Sunday family dinner.
That's it. The biggest, my earlier career, my first career was a supermarket. I worked for a supermarket. Our busiest time was Friday night and Saturday, because that's when people got paid, and they brought their checks, and they got them cashed and paid for their groceries. Sunday was exactly that. You'd go to the church, you'd come home, you'd have the Sunday dinner, everybody be together. You didn't have all the different things to go to like we do now. Now you have so much to go to. And people say, well, it's better. Well, is it? Because the family's kind of like separating.
Yeah.
And community separates the same way.
Got 3 minutes left. I want to give you a chance to sort of I know you did a Christmas message, but just what you hope for Christmas for 2023 and New Year's as well, because I know that, and mention you've got the service on New Year's Eve.
We
too.
do. This year we are going to hold, which we've been doing, this will be our 22nd year, a New Year's Eve service. This year it will be at 5:30. It's been at 5 o'clock, but we don't have anything following us, so we had to end at 6. So it'll begin at 5:30 because, especially like the rabbi, with the Sabbath ending, then he will be able to be there on time and others. This service is going to be built around what is happening in the Middle East and how it affects us. The whole idea, again, not only with this service, as well as what my message and hopes are for 24, can't believe I'm saying 24 already, is that we would have unity even in diversity, and that we understand it begins with us. I've got to be able to respect and understand other people before I can judge other people. And I think that's the service that we're trying to build. And we're going to have multiple faiths there. We're going to be able to, because we all are part of this community. Now, from each church and from each pulpit, from each house of faith, people could, would, and should preach what they believe. But when it's a community service where we're all coming together to talk about the different things and our hopes and dreams, well, my hopes and dreams is that we're going to have the right person in office for whatever office is being filled. We got a lot of people that are talking a lot of stuff that's very difficult out there in politics and in community, in business, and in a lot of things. We're seeing a lot of stuff happening in the world. But I can't affect the world. What David does is not going to affect the Middle East. It's not going to affect Washington. But it can affect the people in my circles. It can affect the people in our community. It can affect people that hear the sound of my voice. Not that I'm any more special than anybody else in this city. But if we care and we show the love of God, as we know, then we can make a difference. And there can be change. And we can offer hope. And that, I think, is my hope for the new year, is that we are able to help people feel better about themselves, more secure, and we will find a way to make a way where there hasn't seemed to be a way in a long time.
It's a good place to end it.
Amen.
I wish you a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It's always good to see you.
And it's good to see you, and I thank you again so much, you and your family.
That's going to do it for this edition of A Conversation With. My thanks to the Reverend Dave Lima for joining us. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all, and we'll talk to you again soon.